look at the camera for the intro. How do you podcast? I don't remember how to do this. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Not Just Politics podcast. We are back in the studio. Gavin and I have returned for the fall semester. My last fall semester. So that's crazy. 4 years really flew by. Anyway, today we have a virtual guest in the studio. A senior at the University of Michigan, Milwaukee.
Wisconsin.
Senior. Oh, Wisconsin. Oh, no. I thought it was Milwaukee. Oh, God. Hot start. Sorry. University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee. Gosh. And a senior history major, Grant Klusmann. Welcome to the show, sir. It's good to have you.
Thank you for having me on.
And despite the fact you got and I botched it, give the people listening and watching a little intro of who you are and what you're all about.
Okay, so as introduced by Carson, my name is Grant, and I'm a senior at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. I'm majoring in history, and it's at UWM that I am the chapter president for the Unite America movement. Little bit of a connection to an alumni guest of this podcast, Christian.
Yes.
He was actually the one who recruited me. So I work with him quite a bit. We're actually planning on meeting at some point this weekend so we can coordinate the student involvement fair next Wednesday. Because Christian's expressed interest in having it filmed. In addition to that, too, I also write on Substack, mostly national defense related issues. I have an article coming out about the Central Intelligence Agency and its history of assassinations. So, without spoiling too much, and I've previously written about the perils of NATO enlargement and the influence of the Israel lobby in American politics. In addition, other things like the military-industrial complex and the petrodollar.
Yeah, I was able to read through. I read through 2 or 3 of your articles. They're very informative. So thank you for contributing that to the overall media landscape. I want to get into some of that stuff later in the program. So I guess starting off with some recently relevant news, I did see that on Instagram, you and Christian were at the DNC doing interviews and filming some content.
I wasn't actually at the DNC, but Christian and one of our friends, Mike Heck, I believe.
Oh, okay. It's my mistake then. Yeah, I thought that was you that was there.
I was here on the home front in Wisconsin.
Okay. Did you watch any coverage of the DNC?
I did. And there a lot of it through Jimmy Dore. I watched quite a bit from. And I also know some people who were down there who I know through the Milwaukee Peace Coalition, who were there to protest outside the DNC. And it's funny because obviously bridge building is a major theme, as one can glean of your podcast. And kind of a unique bridge building moment where a journalist who 2-3 years ago I wouldn't have so much as given the time of day, who I think has since kind of really committed to bridge building himself. Chris Cuomo actually had some brilliant coverage, I think, which I think also applies just as much to the Democratic Party as the Republican Party, where he's looking up at the top floors at the DNC, and he goes, this is the donor class basically, and down below are the common folk. And if that's not evocative of the modern state of the Democratic Party, where the donor's literally looking down on the common people.
Yeah. I did see that clip. I thought that was interesting. He's had an interesting journey. Some of those guys, I don't think Don Lemon has had quite the same situation, but some of these guys that have now left more traditional media and have gone off on their own. Obviously, Tucker Carlson being another one, although he's been doing some crazy. He's been doing some stuff that I don't think is smart, but he's had an interesting journey. Yeah, that is interesting that Chris Cuomo was there and actually providing some pushback. What do you think about just all of that? What do you think about the that sort of trend? I guess really mainly just with Tucker and Chris Cuomo, but those guys leaving traditional media, going off on their own, and then all of a sudden their tones change. I mean, to me, it makes me trust traditional media even less than I
Yeah,
already do.
yeah, I'm in the same boat, man. It's like I get the sense that traditional media is putting so much pressure on these guys to conform to a particular agenda. Uh,
Hmm.
and I think that we could finally kind of see them break free of that mold, upon leaving. And this is why I encourage less. I encourage people to think less through a partisan lens. I'm very much a vote for the candidate, not the party kind of guy. Uh, um, and that's because when you escape that tribal kind of thinking of my party, my team, first of all, it makes cooperation a lot easier and finding common ground and being able to reconnect with your fellow Americans, uh, you know, not through some kind of arbitrary ideological division, but rather through the lens of, we all share this country, we all want this to be successful in this country, and we want what's best for the country at the end of the day. But also, I think that breaking free of that partisan lens also can cause more innovation and people to really break the mold in an independent sort of way.
Did you do you have any thoughts about RFK Jr. dropping out and endorsing Trump?
Yeah, I actually have mixed feelings overall because I don't think he had much choice if he was to endorse anyone. When you look at Kamala versus Trump, especially, and I'm coming from a foreign policy kind of point of view,
Hmm.
Trump will know Angel on foreign policy issues. He is at least expressing some openness to exploring non-interventionist ideas, and has been overall less hawkish if you look at, for example, in 2016 compared to like Hillary Clinton, who was suggesting taking a more aggressive stance against the Russians in Syria, whereas Trump had pointed out that conflicts like Iraq were a big waste of American life, a big waste of American resources and funds. Um, so, while I would definitely not call Trump some kind of a peacenik, from a foreign policy perspective, it makes more sense that RFK would endorse someone like Trump, who's uh, expressed a desire to push for a genuine ceasefire in Ukraine, versus someone like Kamala, who wants to uphold uh, uh, the modern, uh, kind of the modern uh, world order of U.S. Hegemony through means like, for example, NATO enlargement.
Hmm.
Um, that being said, though, kind of my thing that I found interesting about RFK and compelling in the first place was the fact that he didn't belong to the two-party system, and it kind of feels, what I'm hoping, though, that I'm hoping that we don't see him go necessarily all in and be like a yes man to Trump, though, if Trump were to get reelected. I think that it would be more beneficial for RFK to be the voice of reason in the room compared to someone like Trump.
Hmm. Yeah, it was he a big part of his platform was kind of being anti-war and getting or he wanted to see, I guess, less American involvement in some of those foreign conflicts and potentially reallocating resources that were being sent to especially Ukraine. bringing those resources back and doing something with them here to help citizens. So yeah, you have a good point. He maybe didn't have a whole lot of a choice, I guess. Plus that the Democrat Party kicked him out. I mean, they didn't want that guy around.
They did to him what they did to Tulsi Gabbard, essentially.
Yeah, and Bernie a little bit.
Yeah,
Not quite the same situation, but similar.
that is something I've been trying to just kind of that's something I'm trying to be realistic about with a lot of people who are Bernie supporters. Not that long ago, who are now I think seeing Kamala Harris through rose tinted glasses.
Mm-hmm.
It's the fact that look, I mean, politicians like Kamala, if you ask me, come from the same cloth that did cheat Bernie in 2016 and 2020.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, who do you think wins in November? What's going to happen here, Grant?
Oh boy, you see, I've likened this election cycle to like a very high scoring game of tennis where the play
Sure.
never ends. Um, if Biden was still in the race, I would say Trump would clear the floor. I think that after that disastrous debate that we all saw at the
Yeah.
convention, um,
Yes, in Kenosha. Because for just to clarify for people listening or watching, we met each other at the Braver Angels convention
yeah,
in Kenosha. So we watched that, and that was a real circus.
yeah, the next day it's like everyone was talking about at our table.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, that debate, I think. I mean, I've even just spoken, even in the last couple of days with the semester starting again. Uh, I've spoken to a bunch of people who've mentioned that that debate was like a big wake up call that like Biden is just not in a position to run again at that point.
Now, isn't that insane?
How so?
Like, I don't, to me, the craziest part about that debate was a lot of mainstream media sources going, "Oh, well, this is the first we've seen of this mental decline from Biden." It was like they had no idea previously that this guy might not be in a position to run.
Yeah,
And they had spent months like lying to the American people saying that we're having trouble keeping up with him and he's alert during all of his meetings. And that insane, let me see if I can find it, that insane Associated Press article that was like, what if we use AI to smooth over the bumps to trick the American people into thinking that Joe Biden's actually okay? Like, I don't know. I knew that this guy was like in a state of mental decline way before that debate.
yeah.
For some people, that was apparently the first they'd seen of it.
I could see that his mental decline back before the election in 2020 even.
Yeah.
Um uh but that aside, then there was the assassination attempt on Trump.
Yeah.
That almost certain like that in 10 20 years time that will be in history textbooks if we're going to be completely honest about this.
Yeah.
But um with the with Kamala Harris taking the reins of the campaign now, that creates something of a shift. And I know a lot of people who I would have never expected, who I respect too. I think they're smart people. I just think that they might be seeing Kamala through rose tinted glasses because I think they see hope
Mm-hmm.
in that. Oh, it's not Biden's presidency, where a lot of people,
Yeah.
even on the left, have conceded at this point that it has not been as smooth a ride as they initially were expecting. So so what I think well with Kamala, I think that created a shift in this election where it evened out the playing field. But also, what a lot of people aren't forgetting is we still haven't seen the debate yet between
Yeah.
Trump and Kamala. I think that it's not impossible that the debate begins and it basically becomes similar to Trump versus Biden. It's just who uh, who wasn't as bad in the debate
Yeah.
as the.
That's all this is. That's all. I think I agree. I think that's all it's going to be.
I think it's going to, like, will Kamala metaphorically shoot herself in the foot
Mhm.
during the debate? Will she be able to tamp down? Because a lot of criticism about Kamala, she comes off as pandery sometimes
Sure.
versus Trump, who's incendiary. So it's basically who will win out first, or I guess lose out here first. Trump's incendiary and divisive nature, or Kamala's seemingly fake persona. Uh,
Sure.
I do think, though, and I called it right from the get go, that I do think JD Vance's military record will be a serious point when it comes to the vice presidential debates.
Mhm.
Whereas Tim Walz has recently been exposed for what amounts essentially to stolen valor.
Mhm. Um I remember looking at some pundits on social media after the first debate. Um I think Jordan Peterson said this. I mean, it was insane. He was like, anyone that thinks that Biden is still fit to run is like fundamentally detached from reality. And then there's an indent. It says like another paragraph, and he goes, say what you want about Mr. Trump. He's one funny bastard. And it's like, well, if that's the only criteria we need to hit to get your support, then I think we have a much bigger problem on our hands.
Yeah, and it's like, and I've made this joke often that Trump didn't have political ambitions. I think
No.
if he didn't, he would be probably one of the world's greatest insult comics.
Yes. Yes. He's just a roast comic.
He is, which is fine in the comedy world, but
Yeah.
it does run into problems. Like, I originally and I'm still kind of on the fence about do I even vote at this point, though, because while, as you could probably glean from that, I am no fan of Kamala, it's also Trump did a lot to disappoint in the for a lot of former supporters. As far on the foreign policy front, he promised to draw down American military commitments overseas. He promised that a lot more than what he actually did in reality. We still have troops in Syria, which Joe Biden has also perpetuated the U.S. troops in Syria. He didn't follow through with pulling out of Afghanistan, and it was actually Biden who had to do that. Uh, um, and the list goes on, so on and so forth. And another thing that's frustrating with Trump too is he often does this thing of, like, I don't know if he has someone either telling him this or if he's just convinced himself of this or what have you. Like the claim, there was no terror when I was president because Iran had no money, and it's like, well, we know that that's not true because Trump would not stop talking about radical Islam, this and that, 24/7. Uh,
Didn't he have that literally he had that speech where we killed the one leader of ISIS? It's like, what do you mean there was no terror when you were in office?
yeah, he makes this. He claims he defeated ISIS in 3 weeks. And I distinctly
Well,
remember, I remember the morning, in fact, waking up for class when I heard that Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi had been killed in a raid, and that was towards the end of Trump's
yeah.
administration. Um, so yeah, with Trump, what I if he were to be reelected, though, I would want him to actually follow through a lot more with drawing down U.S. military commitments, and not just pay lip service to it like he did the last time he was president, basically.
Hmm. What do you think about, from a foreign policy perspective? Excuse me. What do you think about this claim that he can end the Russia Ukraine conflict in one day?
I think it's going to take a bit more than one day if we're going to be honest. I mean, and I get politicians do this, the thing of over exaggeration of their own abilities. Um, I actually have considered kind of potential ways to end the conflict through such things as one idea that I have is a referendum that's overseen by nations that are somewhat neutral within the East-West divide. So countries that are that might, for example, be geopolitically aligned with either Russia or allied at least with NATO without necessarily being member states, but maintain friendly relations with either Russia and NATO. So, like
Hmm.
Kazakhstan, for example, we have a relatively uh, good relationship with, all things considered, but Kazakhstan is a member of the CSTO, the Russian-led military bloc. But uh, they've also been uh, not enabling of too enabling of Russia. I think when it comes down to the conflict in Ukraine, I think they're a potential candidate that might be able to be trusted in to oversee a referendum such as that with international observers, countries like Serbia, Azerbaijan, potentially Armenia. Um, that's one idea, or maybe a soft border type situation, such as what ended the troubles in Northern Ireland in the '90s, where a soft border is created with, say, the regions of Crimea and Sevastopol and the Donetsk region.
Hmm. Have you been following? And I didn't have this pulled up. I didn't know we were going to get into this specifically, but I saw, I think it was about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, that Ukraine had sent forces into Russia
Yeah,
to take a piece of land on the border. Have you been keeping up with that at all?
yeah, I've been keeping up with it. The war in Gaza has admittedly taken up a little bit more of my time recently, but I did follow that. And yeah, I think that has the potential to be a disaster in this conflict, in the Russo-Ukraine conflict, um, due to the potential for it to basically only escalate it. Uh, I think that that it's better on principle to if the Ukrainian people really, I shouldn't say the people, if the Ukrainian government wants this to make wants to solidify their claim that this is a war of protecting their own national sovereignty. I think that entering or launching an incursion into Russian soil is hypocritical on their end. If
Hmm.
they're trying to resist a if they're trying to resist the loss of their own sovereignty as they claim, which, to be clear, that's actually not Russia's goal to re-annex Ukraine. Um, Really, it's a conflict that in the first place was actually provoked by NATO enlargement due to the deal that we made with the Russians back at the end of the Cold War that we wouldn't expand beyond East Germany, and we reneged on that deal. And the Russians, for the longest time, were patient with us. But over the years, that patience has waned understandably, and it's created this resentment, which has in large part fueled the rhetoric of some of the more hardline elements. Think guys like Prigozhin, the oligarchs, etc.
Hmm. So what do you think? I heard an argument from a friend that Ukraine might be, and to be clear, this friend is this smart person that I know, but this person is not a foreign policy expert. um, but he was saying that potentially Ukraine goes in there, they take some territory so that they have bargaining power to potentially end the war.
Um, I mean, that just sounds like hostage taking at that point, to be honest.
Sure.
It's like when the you look at what the Russians did in Donetsk and Luhansk. Bear in mind that Donetsk and Luhansk, they held a referendum to secede from Ukraine legally, even though it wasn't necessarily internationally recognized. But to the global or to well, there were surveys taken after the fact, and I forgot what the actual percentage was, but a significantly high percentage of Ukrainians, like I believe over half, actually stated that they believed that if the referendums were to be done again, it would still be majority seceding from Ukraine in those regions.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'll tell you this: that's the annexation of Donetsk and Luhansk. That's really where this conflict should have stopped in the first place. Unfortunately, though, NATO wanted to keep pushing and pushing.
Mm-hmm. And from what I understand, Russian forces have pushed further in than those two regions.
Well, that was after the fact.
Okay.
Yeah. Uh, NATO, after that initial crisis in Crimea and Donetsk and the Donbass, uh, they kept pushing further and further for Ukraine integration in NATO,
Mm-hmm.
which is backwards thinking because it was commonly understood in 2008 that Georgia was invaded by the Russians because Georgia was attempting to join NATO. Ukraine didn't get invaded in 2008, 2010, in that time because they had actually ended their aspirations of joining NATO, and Russia's main grievance is being encircled by NATO because if you have bases parked right on their doorstep. It's also worth noting that the Russians, for the longest time, were very accommodating of U.S. goals. They helped us invade Afghanistan in 2001 by
Mm-hmm.
U.S. troops at Karshi Khanabad in Uzbekistan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry. This is, as it's probably obvious. My knowledge base on this particular issue is not obviously not nearly what it is to yours. So I'm not um maybe not able to fully give the pushback that I would like to, or try to give on any of this. I've made my stance on this clear that the killing of innocent civilians is wrong. That
Oh,
aspect of the war is, and I'm not saying, and you're not condoning that.
yeah,
To be clear, I'm not. I wasn't. To be
no, I
clear,
know
I
what you
wasn't.
mean.
I just wanted to lay that out in the beginning because I don't know exactly where I'm treading in this area of the discussion.
Yeah, and I'm someone who actually does believe that the stability for Eastern Europe would be better off if Russia hadn't invaded Ukraine. I
Mm-hmm.
wish the Russians didn't, and that diplomacy was the path taken. The I guess kind of what this comes down to, though, is that over time, Russia's patience has waned because NATO has demonstrated an unwillingness to actually genuinely cooperate with the Russians and accommodate their security interests in a multipolar world.
Yeah,
Like fighting
there's
the Cold
some.
War after the fact. That's essentially what NATO did. It's the Cold War's over, but they treat it like it's still ongoing.
Sure. Yeah, and the one thing you mentioned this in your article, and this is just like an interesting thing that after the Soviet Union fell, a bunch of defense contracts uh, plummeted, and a lot of military contracting companies. I think you said there were 12, and they consolidated into four, which are the four big ones that everyone probably knows about: Northrop Grumman, Raytheon Technologies, Boeing, and Lockheed Martin. And uh, the weird thing about NATO is, like, if you become a member state of NATO, you have to get your weapons. You have to at least be able to equip weapons from those companies. I mean, am I understanding that correctly? That's kind of what the deal is.
Yeah, and that was the excuse given why the Russians weren't allowed to join NATO in the 90s. Was NATO cited interoperability with the Russians. But keep in mind, though, NATO was allowing other former Eastern Bloc countries to join NATO, ones that were equipped with Warsaw Pact equipment, like Poland, the Baltic states, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, etc. Uh, and it's and in the end, with the U.S. being, I believe, the world's top arms dealer, uh, it wouldn't be far-fetched at all that Russia could have been able to acquire U.S. weapons through purchases, and yet we ignored that. We ignored even when even when we allowed them into the Partnership for Peace program for peacekeeping operations. Um, it was sold to the Russians as a potential stepping stone into NATO membership, and that we went back on that as well. So Russia had actually been demonstrating a willingness to cooperate with NATO, but we kept taking advantage of that.
Why do you think that is? Because I've heard an argument, and again, I shouldn't have to say this, but I'll say it again. I'm out of my depth here. This is not my area of expertise. So I take everything I say with a grain of salt, please. I've heard the argument that the reason why Russia was never brought into NATO was essentially that the military industrial complex wanted a long term enemy in the East.
That is part of it.
Mm-hmm.
That is uh, I mean that's how the military industrial complex thrives. Uh, the military industrial complex will look for an artificial enemy where there is none and create one from thin air. And in the immediate aftermath of the Cold War, what seemed to be what appeared at first to be a new world of international cooperation, that was not a world that the military industrial complex wanted, because that would have hit their bottom line. So,
Yeah, I mean, their entire business model is selling weapons of war.
yes, and the military industrial complex incentivizes war, which is from my other article on the military
Yes.
industrial complex. I mentioned that.
Yes, and actually, while we're discussing this, let me do a screen share. How does this work? Yeah, here we go. So this is your Substack. Can you see this? What is happening? No. Um, for anyone that's listening or watching this, Grant Klusmann at substack.substack.com, and this is your Substack. There's some great stuff here. I recommend that people check it out. I'll jump back to. Are we back? Okay. What did that look like on your end? Because I couldn't see anything that just happened.
I could see it.
Okay, good. Okay. Sorry. Um yeah, that it seems to be and obviously there's it's more complicated than that. You can't really go with like a single causality type thing, but it does seem like a lot of that situation is the military industrial complex needing defense contracts, like needing to make more $50 million jets.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's take a little bit. Let's do a little bit of a pivot here. Um, to maybe step away from this for a moment. You had mentioned that like the Trump assassination will be in the history books undoubtedly in 10, 15 years, however long from now. Um, what do you think? Uh, so far in the 2020s, what is all this? Because I'm just always curious, like what has this decade so far been like from your perspective? Like, what were you up to during quarantine? What was COVID like? Looking at just the summer of 2020, all the craziness that happened then.
Yeah,
What do you think about all of that?
that is it's funny that you mention that, because I think it's that period beginning with COVID that has very much brought me to where I am in this very moment of time. So, well, innocently enough, during COVID, I took up probably one of the most ordinary hobbies one could imagine: hiking.
Yes, as most
Forward.
as many people did, right? Right.
Head to the park because I live in a decently open area. That aside, though, so throughout the that time with I initially tried to basically keep my head down in college because um, I figured myself being something of an outsider on the political front that I probably would not have the most popular of opinions, and
Mhm.
uh, and keep in mind that we're on the heels of a global pandemic, followed by a summer of racial tension,
Yeah.
and right away the first, I remember at UWM with like all the posters that were up, uh, um, that I thought were kind of inflammatory, like "Silence is violence," for example, as a slogan referring
Yep.
to race relations. My problem with that is that violence, first of all, aside from violence requiring some kind of physical aspect to it, uh, what about people who are uninformed? What about people
Yep.
who have other priorities? And like that's just the nature of the world we live in. Is you can't pay attention to every issue, right?
Yeah.
Right now, and I might be writing a Substack article actually on this in the future, but there's a genocide going on in Nagorno-Karabakh, uh, uh,
And I'm sorry, where is that? This is my ignorance showing. But where is that?
Caucasus region, Armenia and Azerbaijan, like by
Okay.
there's a dispute basically between those two countries over who actually owns that region.
Okay.
If someone falls silent on that issue, something that's out of the periphery of most Americans' eyes, are they now complicit in that? No. Uh, and it's like other things with the almost like dystopian kind of rhetoric going on at the time. And so I like really felt like I do not have an outlet, and I feel like I really cannot speak my piece on anything. I had a friend who took to social media at the time, to post that anyone who considers voting Trump should die and all that, like that, like that's almost verbatim what this person put on social media, just like inflammatory rhetoric that's not harming anyone. uh and I'm a firm believer that it's just inherently wrong to burn bridges because someone doesn't necessarily share the same ideology as one, and it's especially silly to burn bridges too in this day and age with people for not supporting the same candidate as you, when the two parties, the Republican and Democratic parties, they're two sides of the same coin, basically the same
Hmm.
idea. They're both beholden to the Israel lobby. They're both beholden to Raytheon, BlackRock, the military-industrial complex. That's who
Hmm.
they're really loyal to at the end of the day, the donor class, not the American people. Both parties are complicit in selling out our country. And so I look at that kind of thing, and this individual and I, for unrelated reasons, we had to stop. This person actually burnt bridges with me, but that was it was kind of during that time. So enter my after that year, where it was towards the end that I started getting involved actually in activism, mostly on the foreign policy front. I volunteered for the End Endless Wars campaign that CVA was doing, passing out petitions and all that stuff. We were working to get U.S. troops pulled out of Afghanistan. And then, so it was the following year that I actually bumped into Christian, who was tabling on campus. Uh,
Hmm.
I took an interest in the Unite America movement. We would pass by frequently. Turns out we also shared quite a decent amount in common ideologically, and he invited me on the Unite America movement. That's an episode where we discussed uh, social atomization, and
Hmm.
um, and yeah, and that was kind of my foray into bridge building. So,
Nice.
yeah.
Yeah, it's been a crazy time. It does feel like, and maybe there's a little bit of a separation now, but it does feel like 2020, 2021, 2022. and parts of 2023 were all just one big long year, like a fever dream of a time to be alive.
Yeah.
Do you remember? Do you? No, so how old are you, Grant?
I'm 23.
23. Okay. Okay. So okay, gotcha. So you're okay. So you were 2 years older than me. Okay. Um, where were you doing on where were you on January 6th? I mean, what a crazy question to break out of nowhere. But I'm just like going through all these like crazy things that we all lived through. I mean, I feel like that's a day that a lot of people, obviously not maybe not as immediately, like, everyone remembers where they were on 9/11, or like people say like I'm never going to forget
Yeah.
where I was on that day. Um where were you, like what happened, what were you thinking where you found out about that?
So I was actually at work, working at Goodwill at the time, and you never
Hmm.
expect a thrift store to be the site of tension where you really got to watch what you're saying about that.
Sure.
But right away from my coworkers, it was like one of two responses. Where I had some who were saying that, and I'm someone who really despises the when people say January 6th was as bad as 9/11. 9/11 is, I believe, the deadliest
Mm,
attack in
yeah.
terrorist attack in U.S. history. That is now no excuse for what went down on January 6th. I'll still,
No.
but I think it's very I think it's absurd to make the comparison between something like 9/11 and January 6th. And what a lot of Americans don't realize was our so called democracy was stolen from us a long time ago. Let's not forget, speaking of 9/11, it was the Bush administration that ushered in the Patriot Act. The Obama administration, I believe, locked up a record number of whistleblowers. Uh, um, the Trump administration somehow drone bombed more people than Obama, allegedly. So people acting like January 6th is the start of the end of American liberty. It's absurd to me. Now that being said, I know I strayed a little bit from your question, but
It's okay.
where was I there? So I was working retail as a sales floor associate at Goodwill. And I have some who right away were, acting like this was the worst thing since 9/11. And on the flip side to that, the other kind of absurdity was people trying to justify it.
Of course.
Like, I had one coworker, she said something to the effect of, like, well, what do you expect that people are going? Yeah, that's no, that's still not an excuse. Like, if it was Democrats or liberals doing that, I guarantee you would be condemning it then. Like,
Yeah, yeah, of course.
um,
Whoever whoever's political opponent is storming the Capitol, they're evil. But if it was your political allies storming the Capitol, then oh, of course, this is somehow justified.
yeah,
Well, how did it feel like? I mean, it was so crazy. Maybe I wasn't surrounded by the right people to hear these kinds of things, or I was in the wrong spaces on social media. But it felt like in that time there were very little people that were uh reasonably in the middle. Everyone I knew was either like January 6th was actually good and that it's justified and that it should like happen again, or the other people were like, this is literally, the country is done. They were like ready to hold a ceremony for the end of America.
yeah. I
There was nobody that was
and
like reasonably condemning that, like, hey, this is bad, this should never have happened, but also it didn't succeed, the system prevailed at the end of the day, and this was not like the deadly, like you said, like it's not 9/11, it's not the deadliest attack on like American soil
yeah,
kind of thing.
and I think that that's by design that Americans have such a polarized view of January 6th. I think that that's actually like I think that that is the intent by the state. because it keeps us distracted from what the reality of the situation was. Now, an uncomfortable, an inconvenient truth, if you will, for the mainstream media is the fact that several of the instigators at January 6th have been proven after the fact to be federal informants. The ones who were notably had their faces covered. Like, think about it like this: January 6th was painted as being these far right nuts looking to launch a coup in the name of Trump and I guess QAnon. We're at it.
Yes.
How and a lot of them were painted as gun nuts and whatnot. What kind of gun nuts try to overthrow the U.S. government and don't bring guns to do that? And then you look at the people who coincidentally have their identities concealed. They're the ones instigating disorderly behavior, like the smashing of windows and whatnot. Who and in like the leader of the Proud Boys, he was actually confirmed to be a Fed informant. Uh,
What was that guy's name?
I don't have it out in front of me.
I forget that guy's name. Well, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but let me see if I can find this. Keep going real quick.
So, I mean, I think about that in addition to just, I think it's always a tragedy when Americans behave in such a when they conduct themselves in such a manner, uh, um, as doing things like storming the building on that day. I think that that's one reason to condemn it. I think that the other reason why it should be condemned too is the fact that a lot of people who are acting like, oh, it should happen again and all that, they're cheering on what was essentially a Fed plot. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then that also speaks to the other side of the coin when people act like this was the next 9/11 and whatnot. It's my rebuttal is okay. Then why trust the state's narrative on this? After
Sure.
really revealed, it's like how could we really say that when there's been uh proven concealments of the truth by our own government, and they're trying to ruin people's lives over this too in the courts.
Yeah, I was trying to pull up an article about this. I don't know why it's not loading. Uh, either way, yeah. It's that whole situation was really is just really the whole thing about that was really weird. Like there's like the footage of the some of the Capitol Police like opening the gates, like letting people in. I mean, it's weird. But I digress. Did you see? I just found out about this yesterday. Did you see this DOJ indictment of this Tenet Media company?
I did not. Tell me about it.
This is okay. Well, then we won't spend a whole lot of time on this, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on this. Um, and I did actually have articles ready for this, so I'm going to share a screen here so you can see some of this. This is just from what I understand. Apparently, there is a company called Tenet. It's a Tennessee-based media company called Tenet Media, which had a talent roster that included Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, Dave Rubin, Lauren Southern, Taylor Hanson, and Matt Christensen. Now, I know Benny Johnson is a Turning Point guy. I do believe Lauren Southern is Turning Point, but I apologize if I'm wrong. But these are all right wing media pundits, and these these pundits were allegedly being funded unknowingly by Russian money. It's the DO. This is a Forbes article here for those who are just listening. The DOJ's indictment alleges two Russian state media employees covertly poured $10 million into the company to publish English language videos on various social media platforms, spouting views that are, quote, often consistent with the government of Russia's interest in amplifying U.S. domestic divisions, unquote. what do you think about this, Grant?
Um,
I mean, this is nuts.
I'm skeptical of this claim that first of all, if we're going to go after this media company over alleged ties to Kremlin money, okay, then why aren't the authorities being sent after APAC, who played a key role in the U.S. going to war in Iraq in 2003?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a it's what's the word when you look at when you pose a question that's meant to be a comparison. You know what I mean by posing that question. But the point, well, and then you look at some of the media personalities that they list. Dave Rubin, for example, uh, uh, who's essentially a neocon stooge.
I mean, these people are all grifters, from what I understand.
Yeah,
Benny Johnson is grifter. I don't know about Lauren Southern,
she's a grift.
but
She is a grifter, and
right, I know like Benny Johnson, Tim Pool, and Dave Rubin. I mean, those three are like they're like at the top of like if I was gonna make a list of like right wing grifters, it's like those three are in there.
yeah, Tim Pool is just brain rot.
Yeah, it's not great. I mean, it's not no shade to anyone that consumes the content. I mean, it's fine, but it's like I don't know. It's just they're so consistently right wing. You can pretty much figure out exactly what they're gonna. You can predict these people's views on any given issue to the T, pretty much just by assuming like whatever the like, standard conservative take is.
Which I feel like that's like very suspicious then to assert that they have financial ties to the Kremlin, because you'd think that the Kremlin would want more manipulatable personalities, people where you could feed them and they're not going to be very just consistently going with one ideology, people who you can make them turn
Oh,
him.
Oh, you don't think that? Oh, that's interesting. That's actually the. I guess I disagree. Those are the first people I would go to. Like in my eyes, and so what it seems like here is that these people weren't like directly being funded. Like these individual pundits are not being. I don't believe these individual pundits are being indicted. I did see a tweet or an X or whatever the fuck. I don't know from Tim Pool that was saying that the FBI had contacted him saying that I've been the potential victim of a crime. I'll be helping them in the investigation. So it seems like the pundits did not know about this, and it was the media company itself that was featuring segments from these people's shows and like featuring their content.
Yeah, so at any rate, though, how I find it suspicious, like I don't know if suspicious, but I find it baffling though then that the article even really highlights that point of these specific pundits if they're unknowing or unwitting.
Oh, that's probably just for name rec. That's probably just for clicks.
Okay, fair enough.
If I had to guess, it's probably just for clicks. And if it's coming from a news source that is on the left, then this is an easy way to kind of discredit these people that are your political opponents type thing, right?
Yeah, at any
Um,
yeah, at any rate, though, I mean, I'm someone. I think that it sets a very dangerous precedent to be going after media companies. And you look at a lot of media companies; a lot of them have ties to foreign governments. The Israelis spy on American citizens. Like this is a confirmed fact. They've been doing it for decades, and I don't see anyone going after Israeli media. Uh,
mhm.
I've heard rumors, and I don't know how true it is, so take it with a grain of salt. But that the Daily Wire is funded by the Israelis, at least in part. I mean, I don't see anyone going after the Daily Wire.
It wouldn't be the well also, but Israel's not an adversary of the, and I see your point, I guess, but like Israel's also not a sworn enemy to the to the United States in the way that Russia, I guess, is now.
Yeah, because our government deemed it that way.
Sure,
Though
but that's
I would
yeah.
argue Israel does more harm to us, though. I'm just saying a lot of it's motivated though by the geopolitics anyway. I mean,
Sure.
the boogeyman out of Russia.
Yeah. Now, based on your knowledge of the history between the United States and Russia, is there a precedent like for this being true, like with Russia meddling with our society in that way through media, through funding certain groups of people?
I mean, during the Cold War, I mean, that's one of the traditional ways of espionage. We did it with the Russians.
Mm-hmm.
Russians spied on U.S. soil. Usage of front groups. I mean, uh, I would say, yeah, there's a precedent for it. The problem being, though, that I'm not seeing necessarily a direct link. And maybe if you're like, feel free to share the article with me so I could read.
Oh yeah, yeah. Sorry, let me I should have dropped this in the in the chat for you so you could see it. Um, I can't. What? I can't. Okay, I'm sorry. I guess I'll have to email it to you. I'm sorry. Um, so you can see it because I tried to share it with you in the chat, but it says I have to upgrade the Riverside to do that. Um, yeah. Sorry. What was your question going to be?
Um, how do you mean?
Oh, you were asking something. You were like, if you could send me the article.
Oh,
What is it that you were going to look for in there?
just so that way, like maybe I could read it later. And
Yeah.
um, who knows? Maybe I'm completely if I'm completely off base and they're saving it right till the end, like the big hook, line, and sinker of oh, I get it now.
Sure, sure. And to be fair, I looked into this a little bit this morning, but I didn't do like a super crazy deep dive on anything, any like super like deep dive on this. So maybe we shouldn't even be discussing this. I just thought this was crazy. I just saw an article yesterday and I was like, this is crazy. Because, there was the whole thing, there was the whole investigation saying that Donald Trump was like an agent of Russia for 6 years, but it was just an investigation. Like there were never charges that were filed. There was this like fake thing that the mainstream media pushed for years and nothing ever came out of that.
That's the thing. Whenever people tell me how afraid they are of conspiracies, our media perpetrated.
Yeah, like they perpetrated that one for years and nothing ever came of it. But it doesn't seem like, but this is not an investigation. If this was an investigation, I'd be like, oh, here they go again with another Russia collusion thing. But this does seem like there's actual charges being pressed. There's an actual indictment. But either way, you know. I guess we can move on from that. I don't know. People can go check it out. It is an interesting story. I don't know. I don't know what that means. You do have an interesting point that maybe sets a dangerous precedent for governments going after media companies, for taking money. And I just want to say something real quick. We didn't get any offer for $10 million from the Kremlin. I'll delete this whole show. I'll delete the whole archive of this show if if we can get a little chunk of money. Why weren't we funded? We got no. Gavin, did we get any offers about that? No offers. Unbelievable.
I thought that according to your most recent one with Christian, I thought that the UAE was going to be funding you guys.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, I've been trying to sell this show to anyone that will buy it. I have tried that whoever wants to buy. The Saudis are buying up a bunch of media. They can buy this show. Anyone. I will for a little nice little chunk of money. I'll delete this whole show. We'll start from scratch.
What was that thing from if I'm remembering correctly back at the convention where you uh where you yeah I think you started off with like guys, should we just end the show and I might be misremembering the setup to it. For those who don't know, I was behind the camera, not the one manning the camera. I was just
Oh yeah, okay. What sorry, what about that?
Oh no, it was because you were mentioning the if the Russians want to make me a
Yes, yeah, I said I was like, no, I mean, I've said this multiple times on the show. I mean, if someone wants to give us a nice little chunk of money, I'll do. I mean, as I'll debase myself for, for 10 million, I'll delete this whole. As I said, I'll delete this. I'll delete all 50 plus episodes. This show, they'll be gone. We'll start from scratch. I'll go wherever. Yeah, I mean, it is a funny bit that some people have done. Um, See, I mean, what do you think? Just looking ahead, going into November, going into even into October, November, into these next couple of months. What are as someone who has sort of now taken up a bit of a role as a bridge builder and as a foreign policy guy? What do you think your main goals are? Like what are you planning? And like looking ahead, what are you thinking? Your role in all of this should be and is going to be.
um. Yeah, I think that it's going to be more raising awareness in the public consciousness through more of these articles that I write. I've got one that I'm working on about the CIA. Got a few more planned regarding uh, the um, the need to downsize the defense budget. Um, got a few other ideas in the works. I think with Trump recently suggesting that he would release all everything related to Epstein's child trafficking activities, I think that might
Mm-hmm.
be also potential fodder for a potential article, or might warrant me writing an article about the general history with the use of such things as trafficking and whatnot, and the relationship between the intelligence community and organized crime.
Yep.
Whitney Webb is a good author on that stuff who I'd highly recommend. Um, and yeah, keep informing the public, keep staying active, and
Mm-hmm.
don't try not to get discredited in the process.
Sure. Sure. And what kind of plans do you have for the Unite America movement chapter?
So we're tabling at the student involvement fair. Uh,
Okay.
we're going to be holding some brainstorming sessions in the very near future. I think Christian has some ideas in the works of some discussions he would like to like bigger scale that I think he would like to host. I don't know if he wants me to spoil any of these here or not.
Oh no, I of course no. Any plans you guys have, I don't want to mess anything up, but just like any broad strokes you can paint with here, any sort of ideas,
Yeah,
or just
Christian has expressed to me an interest in starting the official UAM boy band. No, I'm kidding.
right, yeah, gonna be touring. Gonna and now you're gonna drop the dates. The dates are gonna start scrolling on the episode right now. All the cities you guys are going to.
Christian, that was a joke.
Yeah, right. Yeah, if Christian's listening, that was a bit.
Yeah, he's face palming right now.
Yeah, as we speak, he shut this episode off 30 minutes ago. um, yeah. Okay, so then I guess we have a couple of some concluding questions for all the guests. What's the also, and I guess currently we didn't even really get to this. Are you the question I usually ask the guest is like what is your favorite part of your job? Now I don't know exactly what you consider to be your job, right? Like are you I guess it could be your job being involved in United America movement, or your job being informing people through your Substack, or you know uh, whatever route you want to take there with that, or all of them. What is your favorite part of what you do?
um, I think that I consider it a public service, and any time that you could help uh uh give people the information that they otherwise would not have been privy to, because the powers that be have a vested interest in not making people aware. I'm someone who's always had an act, and who has takes pride in being able to 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 hand people information that might be potentially useful to them, that could inform them and inform how they might vote, might cause them to see a new perspective that they might not have known earlier. Um, and I think that this is something that should be this kind of sharing of information should be open to everyone of all stripes, regardless of ideology or anything else. And I'm happy to always connect with everyone to because at the end of the day, we're Americans first and foremost, not Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, liberals, uh,
Mhm.
uh, socialist, capitalist, corporatist, minarchist. Start
Yeah.
every ideology after a while, even the more niche ones.
This is how we fill the time. You just keep listing ideologies for the next 10 minutes.
Yeah. What other ones can I think of? The more obscure, the better.
Yes, yes.
I don't. What would Alex of us, the Stare Party fame, has he?
Oh, Alex Darlington?
Yeah.
Who even knows? He's made up his own.
Okay, Alex.
He'll have like a new one tomorrow.
Yeah, Darlington, Darlingtonism.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, like he'll have his own one. Yeah. So for you, this is a public service thing. It's keeping people informed.
Hmm.
I like that. What is something you're afraid that people will get wrong about you?
I could see people. I always make a point to never get pigeonholed into one ideology or another, because I want. I think that our problems affecting us as a country are beyond political parties. They're beyond ideology. It's a general issue of the ruling class. It's you look at the way the mainstream media reports the news, and they're counting on people to be A, divided, and B, just not knowing better.
Yep.
And I'm someone who gets very mad when I see people, and it's not any not at any fault of the people kind of being deceived by the media, of course. I don't blame them. But I get mad, though, when I see people who I respect and admire basically being laughed at, essentially, by our own media, who's counting on them not knowing. It's like insulting like your family almost, or insulting friends of yours, family of yours, because the media misunderestimates us as a people. Like the powers that be, they think we're dumb, basically, is essentially that's why they report the news the way they do. And we're not dumb as a people. It's just the fact that not everyone is privy to this information, which I understand because people have priorities at the end of the day. And my role on this front is for those who might otherwise not be privy to this information to give them the kinds of information that you won't hear on the mainstream media, and in the process, bringing everyone together to share this information. It's open to everyone.
Mm-hmm. So you're afraid that people will pin you as a left-wing guy or a right-wing guy or a corporate shill or a war hawk or something like that.
Not so much afraid so much as I strive to not be pigeonholed into one ideology or other.
Okay, yeah.
Um, um, you know, I'm not sure if I'm necessarily afraid of anything. It's more of just I have certain things that I take precautions for, even in my
Sure.
make sure
Sure.
this could be something that anyone, that no one's personal ideology will turn them away from.
Okay. So if I'm hearing you, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but so it's not so much a fear, but it's more of that you feel like you have a responsibility to, and I guess that goes back to the public service thing. You have a responsibility to uh help inform people, and then yeah, and then just not wanting to fall too far into any one place.
Oh yeah, yeah, I would say that. I mean, even I think today, I think I gave a pretty good criticisms of both Trump and Kamala Harris, respectively. I mean,
Yeah.
which that's genuinely how I feel about both candidates. Um, Uh, and but to anyone who wants to vote either one, though, I'm happy to inform them regardless because I think that that's my mission.
Mhm.
I'll work with anyone to pass on the information that they otherwise might not be privy to.
What advice do you have for young people? You know, or what's a piece of advice that you didn't get when you were in your younger years that you wish you would have gotten?
Yeah, I was always told when I was younger to in college keep your head down. Essentially, don't make yourself a target.
Mhm.
And I would say no, don't be afraid to get involved. But that being said, though, be optical with whatever you're involved in.
Sure.
You have a responsibility, and you owe it to yourself, and you owe it to your colleagues to be optical, be presentable, respectable, approachable, because that, at the end of the day, will help you get your message across.
Right. So don't be afraid to speak up for what you believe in, but be a little bit tactical with movements and don't just go out there firing wildly.
Yes, and when I was like younger and fresh to college, prior to meeting Christian, I think Christian I actually learned a lot from. I was definitely a little bit more of a little bit more fiery.
Sure.
Part of it might also just be like a warm-blooded kind of thing. When you become a little bit more mature, you start to learn how to be less incendiary.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely learned. I mean, Christian's very good at that. Christian is very good at navigating difficult conversations and presenting his ideas in a way that is not offensive and approachable. I think, like you said. Um, okay,
I also learned quite a bit, and I would recommend him as a potential guest in the future. Aiden Schenk. I helped him when he was running for student president at UWM, and he yeah, he's a also pretty good at the optics and whatnot. So I took a lot of notes from him and learned quite a bit from him.
okay, yeah. If you could connect me with him, I'd be interested. Okay. What else do I got here? What gives you hope for the future?
I think what gives me hope for the future is the fact that with this election cycle, we're starting to see increasing people are becoming increasingly more aware of the problems of the two-party system. Third party candidates. I'm seeing people who I would have never expected to break free of their original mold of whether it's Republican or Democrat, actually break from their mold. Um, and I think that there is hope for the future of people being able to think a little bit more independently. You look at, I think, conservatism and liberalism as we know it in our current kind of context. I think it's transitioning into something new altogether. And I think that this also lends room to an increased level of cooperation between people of differing ideologies. Due to the fact that there's the common enemy of the two-party system and their donor class backers.
Mm-hmm. Not to open too big of a can of worms this late in the program, but do you think that we'll ever see an end to the two-party system in our lifetime?
I think we're currently witnessing the death of it right now.
Interesting. Okay. Um, any little bit on that you'd like to elaborate?
Um,
Other than what you previously have said, and to be clear, I don't disagree with you. It seems like that system has so much money behind it that it's almost kind of, how do I phrase this? It's like it would be so, as much as I would like to see it, as JFK would say, shattered to thousand pieces and scattered with the winds type thing. It would seem almost weird to see it go away in a weird way. You know what I mean? Because it's existed for so long and it's been such a force. It's like, what would a multi-party system even look like in this country?
that is a good question. Well, I mean, we kind of had a taste of this back when Ross Perot ran, and
Sure.
he was the candidate who really frightened the political establishment by taking so much of the vote as he did, despite
Hmm.
the election anyway. Um, I think in a multi-party system, what I would prefer to see would be, I think that we could create almost a debate for like, like Republicans have their debates, Democrats have their debates before it whittles down to the finals. I think that there should also be a third one set up for candidates of third parties, also televised, and then
Hmm.
that it should actually be a three-way debate at least.
Yeah, I think they should have let RFK in that first debate with Trump and Biden.
Yeah, he would have cleaned the floor with both of them.
Yeah, no, I mean that Andrew Schultz made a really funny point. He was like, "It's a good thing they didn't, because there'd be chaos in this country afterwards." Because RFK would have it would have been a bloodbath for those two.
Yeah.
You know, agree with RFK or not, um, much sharper than Biden, and I think he would have stood up to Trump's rhetoric much better than Biden did.
Oh yeah.
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 Well, he's no longer on the ballot. He's removing his name from I think even more states now. I just saw something, he's taking his name off more ballots.
Yeah. Everyone
So
supreme.
yeah, yeah, right. And I am curious to know, I think I agree that this is probably I have seen more people, especially my peers at school, who are on the left who have said, hey, I'm not voting for Kamala, I'm going to go third party, that kind of thing. And Gavin and I have had this talk a few times. We're just curious, like, how many of those people are actually going to follow through whenever they walk into the voting booth, or how many people are going to essentially be consumed by the fear and end up going red or blue anyway.
Yeah, and that's another thing. That's you know what? I think that might be another piece of advice I might add is don't let the media gaslight you into. Don't
No.
let them tell you you're wasting your vote. Don't let them tell you that. Because hey, even a protest vote that gets even to our two-party system though. If they start losing voters, that puts pressure on them to at least run candidates that are more in tune with the American populace,
Yeah.
and their donors also understand this too, that hey, they can't just get away with anything.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, Grant Klusmann, thank you very much,
And
sir,
real
for
quick,
joining us. Yes,
real quick before I go, I was wondering if I could also give a shout out to
of course.
someone who's
Yes.
very helpful for my Substack. She herself is also a fellow author on Substack, and I is always giving me good advice. I'd recommend looking up Anastasia Lendowski. She puts up a lot of cool stuff on Substack, and I'd highly recommend that you guys also take a look at hers.
That name is not, this is maybe not going to be the best for the, the viewers. That name sounds familiar. I'll have to look her up on Substack, but that name looks really familiar. I feel like I might follow her Substack.
Yeah, she writes the Tales of Lacuna.
Yes, I do follow her.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah. Shout out to her. Cool. I'll maybe reach out to her. Maybe we'll get her on the show at some point.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you for having me on. Appreciate it. And
Of course.
time. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, man. Hey, best of luck with the UAM chapter at school, and yeah, we'll keep in touch.
Awesome. Looking forward to it.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.